I never planned to become a father. In fact, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you I was perfectly fine being alone. My days were quiet, predictable. I had my books, my tiny apartment above the bookstore, and a routine as fixed as the sun rising. I used to think life was just something to endure gently. Nothing too dramatic. Nothing too painful. Keep your head down, stay out of trouble, and maybe, just maybe, you'd get through it without too many bruises. Then came the letter, and everything I thought I knew unraveled. It wasn't even addressed to me directly. It came in a brown envelope, no return name. Just one page. One name I hadn't heard in years, Claire. A name that once made my heart race, and later made it ache. She was gone. And in her absence, she left behind a child. A little girl with her eyes and my last name. This isn't a story about heroism. It's not about some grand comeback or life-changing success. It's about learning how to hold a tiny hand when your own is trembling. It's about figuring out how to pack a lunchbox when you can barely cook. It's about love, the quiet kind, the difficult kind, the everyday kind. If you're expecting a miracle, you won't find it here. But if you've ever wondered whether someone like you, ordinary, flawed, afraid, could become something more, then maybe, just maybe, you'll see a bit of yourself in my story. Because when the coffee got cold that morning, my life finally began. I've always believed in the quiet. In the clinking of a coffee spoon, the soft scratch of a turning page, the creak of wooden stairs in an old bookshop. Noise never appealed to men at parties, not the endless scroll of small talk. My life, until that morning, was wrapped in the kind of silence that some people mistake for loneliness. But I wasn't lonely. I was stable. And that's something, isn't it? My apartment sat just above the bookstore where I worked, just me and a few thousand stories I never finished. The mornings were all the same, coffee just a little too bitter, toast burned at the edges, and the same bench by the window where I'd watch the world go on without me. I liked it that way. I had made peace with a life that didn't ask too much from me. And then, that Tuesday, a letter arrived. It came in an envelope so plain, it almost escaped my notice, wedged between a bank statement and a pizza flyer. There was no return address, only my name in a delicate, familiar script. I knew that handwriting. Even after all these years, my hand trembled a little. Claire. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first, as if the ritual might protect me from whatever the envelope contained. I sat by the window, same as always, but the world outside seemed off. Like someone had knocked the lens out of focus. The letter sat on the table, unopened, daring me to stay unchanged. Eventually, I slid my finger under the flap. Inside was just one sheet of paper. No greeting. No signature. Just a few sentences that would shift everything. Claire passed away last month after a long battle with cancer. She left behind a daughter. Her name is Emma. She is 6 years old. You are her father. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No emotion. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't drink it. I just stared at the steam that wasn't there anymore. I read the letter again. And then again. I must have read it 20 times, as if repetition would make the words mean something else. I even checked the back of the paper. Nothing. No clue as to who sent it. No hint of what I was supposed to do next. 6 years old. I did the math. Claire and I had broken things off just over 7 years ago. It had been messy. Not dramatic, but unfinished. We had both walked away pretending it was the right thing, even though we never really closed the door. I never knew she was sick. I never knew she had a child. And now, suddenly, that child was mine? I didn't move for a long time. The bookstore downstairs opened without me. The sunlight shifted across the wooden floor. A fly buzzed near the window. Life went on, just like it always had, only now I wasn't part of it. I was stuck wedged between the man I used to be and the man I wasn't ready to become. What do you do when you find out you have a daughter? What do you do when the woman you once loved is gone, and she never told you what she was going through? Anger rose first. It's funny how anger is always faster than grief. I was angry at Claire for keeping this from me. Angry at myself for not calling her on her birthday last year. Angry at the world for moving so casually forward while my mind had stopped. Then came the questions. Did Emma know about me? Did she want to meet me? Where was she now? The letter hadn't said. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Mark. Mark had been Claire's cousin. We weren't close, but I remembered he worked in social services. I found his number in an old contact list buried in my phone, the kind of list you never update but can't delete either. He answered on the third ring. Hello? It's Daniel, I said, voice dry. Daniel Hart. A pause. Daniel. Jesus. I didn't think I'd hear from you again. I got a letter. Another pause, longer this time. About Claire. Yes. A breath, sharp and heavy. You should have known, he said. I told her to tell you, but... You know Claire. She was always afraid of disrupting lives. Well, I said bitterly, mission failed. I'm sorry. There was real weight in his voice. Not just sympathy, regret. He knew this should have gone differently. Emma, I said quietly. Where is she? With a foster family. Temporary placement. She's safe, but she doesn't have anyone else. Claire's parents are gone. No siblings. And then there's you. Does she know about me? She knows her mom kept a photo of you in a box under her bed. That's something. That's something. I ended the call with a time and place. Next Tuesday. 10 a.m. A family center just across the river. The letter was still on the table. I didn't know what to do with it. Burning it felt too dramatic. Throwing it away felt too cruel. So I folded it back along its original crease and slid it inside the back cover of my favorite book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want it to be alone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, thinking about Claire. Her laugh, sharp and short. The way she curled up with books like they were blankets. The last words she said to me before we parted, "You'll be okay, Daniel. You always are." Turns out she was wrong. I wasn't okay. Not now. And yet, a part of Miss's strange, stubborn part felt the faintest stirrings of something I hadn't felt in years. A beginning. I met Claire on a Sunday. Not one of those cinematic Sundays with sunshine and violins, but a rainy, grey, ordinary Sunday when the sky looked like wet cement and people moved like they were underwater. I was restocking shelves at Whitman's Books Aisle 4, poetry section when I heard her laugh. It cut through the gloom like a crack of light under a closed door. I turned around, and there she was, damp hair pulled into a careless bun, a scarf wrapped twice around her neck, and a book in each hand like she was weighing the worth of 2 worlds. She looked at me and said, "Help me decide. Plath or Bukowski?" I blinked. Well, one will break your heart poetically, the other will punch you in the face with it. She grinned. So, Plath for Mondays and Bukowski for Fridays. That's dangerously accurate, I said. She walked out with both books that day. And 3 weeks later, with my number. Claire wasn't like me. Where I was cautious, she was impulsive. Where I observed, she acted. I loved her recklessness, not the destructive kind, but the way she threw herself fully into things. Into people. Into moments. She taught me how to drink red wine from mugs, how to dance barefoot in the living room, how to say yes before thinking of all the reasons to say no. And I think I gave her quiet. A steadiness she didn't know she needed. For 2 years, we lived like that. Simple, real, beautifully uneventful. She called our little apartment the still point of the turning world. I never told her it was a line from T.S. Eliot. She would have rolled her eyes and kissed me anyway. But life, as it often does, began to fray at the edges. Claire wanted more. Not money or things, she wasn't like that. She wanted movement, change, the next chapter. She talked about grad school, traveling to Lisbon, writing a book of essays. She wanted to feel everything life had to offer, like it was a fruit she needed to bite into before it went overripe. And me? I was still afraid to leave the bookstore. "I feel like I'm pulling you," she said once, over half-eaten noodles and wine gone warm. "You're not," I lied. But she was. And I knew it. And so did she. The end wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. There were no slammed doors or shouted regrets. Just a quiet Sunday, again fittingly Samhain. She packed a single suitcase and kissed me once, long and slow. "If we're meant to find each other again," she whispered, "we will." And just like that, she was gone. In the years that followed, we spoke only a handful of times. Brief, polite, occasional. I didn't know where she went. She didn't say. I didn't ask. Maybe I should have. The last message I got from her was a birthday text 4 years ago. Just, "Happy birthday, D. Hope you're well." I never replied. Not out of anger, but because I didn't know how to answer someone who had once been your whole world and then wasn't. So, when that letter arrived, when I found out she had died and left behind a daughter, my first reaction wasn't shock. It was guilt. Because somewhere, in the back of my mind, I had always imagined that she was out there living the life she dreamed of. I never thought she was fighting something silently. That she had cancer. That she was alone. That she'd become a mother. I went looking for photos that night. Buried in a showbox under my bed was a collection of memories I hadn't touched in years: Polaroids, ticket stubs, a leaf she once pressed between the pages of a Murakami novel. There she was, laughing under a paper umbrella in Chinatown, reading upside down on the couch, holding a sparkler too close to her face on New Year's Eve. In none of the pictures did she look like someone who would keep such a secret from me. But then again, people carry pain in pockets no one ever checks. I found the one photo I remembered most clearly as on the bookstore steps, arms around each other, her chin tucked on my shoulder. We looked like a story that had only just begun. I turned the photo over. In her handwriting, it said, "Still point. Always." I sat on the floor for a long time with that photo in my hand. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not the kind of crying you see in movies. No dramatic gasps, no sobbing into pillows. Just quiet, uncontrollable tears. The kind that sneak up on you when the body finally lets go of holding it all in. I wasn't just mourning her. I was mourning who I had been with her. The version of me that believed love could make someone brave. That believed we had time. That believed silence was always harmless. It wasn't. Claire's silence hadn't just cost us years. It had cost a child her father. The next morning, I called out of work. Tom, my boss at the shop, didn't ask questions. He never did. He just said, "Take what you need, Dan. We'll manage." I spent the day reading. Not books. Not words on a page. I was reading myself, me fears, my past, my reluctance. That night, I stared at my ceiling and whispered, "What would you want me to do, Claire?" Of course, there was no answer. But in the darkness, I imagined her smile. And in that image, I felt the faintest nudge. A pull. Not toward fixing everything. Not toward becoming some perfect version of myself. Just toward showing up. For Emma. For the little girl who had Claire's eyes. For the piece of her still here. I didn't know how to be a father. Hell, I could barely keep a plant alive. But maybe fatherhood wasn't about knowing what to do. Maybe it was about being willing to learn. Willing to stay, even when you're scared. That night, I opened a fresh notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "Dear Emma, I don't know how to begin. But I promise I will not disappear." Tuesday came faster than I expected. Funny how time drags when you're waiting for a train, but rushes when you're dreading the destination. I stood outside the family center at 9:55 a.m. A beige building with chipped paint and a garden that looked like no one had watered it in weeks. The sign above the door read Hawthorne Resource Services, like something out of a government pamphlet. It didn't feel like the place where you meet your daughter for the first time. I checked my watch. Then again. I wiped my hands on my jeans, even though they weren't sweating. I wanted to run. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much, and didn't know what the hell to do with that. Mark met me in the lobby. He looked older than I remembered, tired, grey around the temples, suit too big for his shoulders. "She's in the playroom," he said. Playroom. That word hit harder than I thought it would. "Do I just walk in?" I asked. He hesitated. "She knows someone's coming. She doesn't know who." My stomach twisted. "So I'm a stranger. You're her father." Both statements were true. And equally terrifying. He led me down a hallway lined with colorful posters about feelings. It's okay to be sad, one read, with a cartoon bear hugging a rainbow. I wanted to punch that bear. We stopped at a small window. I looked inside. There she was, sitting cross-legged on a carpet shaped like a sunflower, flipping through a picture book. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, sneakers untied, one of them tapping against the floor in rhythm. She couldn't sit still. Claire had been the same. I didn't breathe. "She looks like her," I said quietly. Mark nodded. "She acts like her, too." My throat tightened. I wasn't ready. I'd never be ready. But I couldn't leave. "I'll give you space," Mark said. I opened the door. She looked up when I walked in. Just one glance. Not curious, not scared. Just aware. Like she was cataloging me, the way children do instinctually, trying to place a new face in their world. "Hi," I said, kneeling a few feet away. She blinked. Said nothing. "I'm Daniel," I offered. "But you can call me whatever you want." Still nothing. She turned the page in her book. Slowly. Deliberately. I smiled, awkwardly. "Is that about animals?" I asked. She nodded. "Progress." "I like animals," I said. "Well, most of them. Spiders scare me." She looked up again. "Even the tiny ones. Especially the tiny ones. They sneak up on you." Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. I didn't rush. I didn't try to touch her. I just sat near enough for her to know I was there, and far enough for her to choose. "Do you want to know why I'm here?" I asked. She shrugged. "Mark said someone was coming. But I don't know who you are." I nodded. "That's fair. I didn't know I was coming either. Until last week." She tilted her head. "Are you a social worker?" I almost laughed. "Not even close." "Then what?" I took a breath. "I knew your mom. A long time ago." She froze. Her hand tightened on the corner of the book. "You knew Mommy?" she asked, voice suddenly small. I nodded. "Yes. We were very close." A long pause. Then, softly, she had a photo of you under her bed. I wasn't supposed to find it. She kept that. Emma nodded. You looked younger. And your hair was better. I chuckled. That sounds about right. Silence settled between us again. But it wasn't heavy. Not anymore. It was the kind that allowed breathing. Then she asked the question I had both dreaded and hoped for. Are you my dad? There it was. The truth sitting in the open. Yes, I said. I am. She didn't cry. Didn't gasp. Just nodded slowly, like she was solving a puzzle and the last piece finally fit. Okay, she said. Just that. Okay. Not why. Not where were you. Not I don't believe you. Just okay, the softest forgiveness I didn't deserve. We spent the next hour sitting on that sunflower carpet. She told me about her favorite animal, turtles, her least favorite vegetable, carrots, and how she hated naps because her dreams were too noisy. I listened like each word was a lifeline. Because, in a way, they were. She didn't ask about Claire. And I didn't push. Some grief is too fresh to hold in your hands. It has to live in the spaces between words, in the way a child looks away when you say your mom. When it was time to leave, she surprised me. Will you come back? She asked. I want to, I said. Would that be okay? Another shrug. But this time, there was a smile tucked into it. I guess, she said. But no spiders. Deal. She reached out then just briefly and touched my sleeve. Not a hug. Not even a handhold. Just a tap. Like a tiny Morse code. You're here. I see you. Maybe this could work. As I walked back into the hallway, Mark was waiting. She okay? He asked. She's more than okay, I said. She's amazing. He nodded, then hesitated. There's paperwork, Daniel. If you want to. I want to, I said before he could finish. He handed me a folder. It won't be easy. There's counseling, background checks, assessments. I don't care, I said. And I didn't. Whatever it took, I'd do it. Not to make up for lost time I couldn't, but to make sure there'd be no more lost time ahead. That night, I stood in my apartment and looked around. It felt too small now. Too quiet. Too mine. I opened the cupboard. Tossed the instant noodles. Pushed the whiskey to the back. Cleared a shelf. Tomorrow, I'd buy turtle stickers. Maybe some juice boxes. I didn't know how to be a father. But I knew how to begin. Homes don't change overnight. But the way you see them can. After meeting Emma, I walked into my apartment and saw everything differently. The silence that once comforted me now felt unfinished. Like a sentence someone started but never completed. My couch slightly sunken from years of sitting in the same spot. My bookshelf lined with unread books and dust jackets faded by time. My fridge mostly empty, except for milk 2 days past its date and 3 bottles of hot sauce I never used. This wasn't a place for a child. It barely qualified as a place for a man. The first thing I did was take down the framed Bukowski quote in the hallway. "Don't try," it said. For years, I'd loved the contradiction of Itho trying too hard killed art, or life, or both. But now? It just looked lazy, detached. Exactly the opposite of what Emma needed from me. I replaced it with a drawing Emma had given me scribbled on the back of a worksheet in the playroom. It was a purple turtle wearing sunglasses, standing on what might have been a skateboard. She shrugged when she gave it to me. His name is Coolio. He doesn't like carrots either. Coolio was taped to the wall by evening, right where Bukowski used to be. Next came the bookshelf. I took everything down. Every novel I kept just to look smart. Every poetry collection I never finished. Every philosophy book I claimed had changed me but couldn't remember a single line from. In their place, I stacked a few children's books I picked up that morning. The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Where the Wild Things Are, Charlotte's Web, and one slim hardcover I hadn't seen in years, The Paper Bag Princess, which Claire had once read aloud, laughing at every page. I didn't know if Emma liked books, but I hoped she would. I needed something familiar to share with her. Then there was the kitchen. I cleared the fridge, tossed everything expired, everything processed, everything with a name I couldn't pronounce. At the grocery store, I wandered aimlessly. I hadn't pushed a cart in years. I picked up apple juice, whole wheat bread, because apparently that's what responsible people do. Carrot sticks, which I later remembered she hated. A dozen eggs. A small plant I didn't need but felt like the kind of thing a home should have. I passed by the cereal aisle 3 times before finally grabbing a box of something with a cartoon bear on it. It felt like surrendering to the unknown. That night, I cleaned the guest room. It had been used mostly for storage, old jackets, unopened mail, a guitar I once told Claire I would learn to play. I cleared the closet, opened the window, dusted the corners. Then I stood in the center of the room and tried to imagine a 6-year-old girl living here. Emma, my daughter. What would she want? What would make her feel safe? I didn't know, but I cared enough to try. I ordered a nightlight online, the kind that projected stars onto the ceiling, and a stuffed turtle, and bedsheets with cartoon clouds. For someone who'd never planned to be a father, I was learning quickly how to care in very specific ways. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. The one I had bought the night after the letter came. I wrote, Day 1. The apartment smells like cleaning spray and possibility. I don't know what I'm doing, but I think that's okay. Maybe love doesn't need a manual. Maybe it just needs space. And a turtle named Coolio. The next day, I called Mark. I want to do this right, I said. Not just legally. Emotionally. He sounded relieved. We can set you up with a counselor. There's a parenting group, single dads, small group, very real. Real sounds good. He paused. She asked about you, by the way. That caught me off guard. What did she say? She asked if you were tall. I laughed. And? I told her you were tall enough to reach the top shelf but not tall enough to hit your head on doorways. Good answer. Then he added, she smiled when I said it. It was a small thing, but it lit up something inside me I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. The following weekend, I bought a second-hand desk and painted it soft yellow. I didn't know if Emma liked yellow, but Claire used to say it was the color of morning. I placed it by the window in her room, added a small tin of crayons, a stack of blank paper, and a little sign I made with crooked handwriting, Emma's spot. I wasn't trying to impress her. I just wanted her to know she belonged. That Sunday, as the city buzzed with lives not mine, I sat on the floor of her room and read through Charlotte's Web. I didn't cry when Charlotte died. I cried when Wilbur sat alone afterward. Because grief, I've learned, doesn't always come from the loss itself. Sometimes it comes from the echo, the space that's left behind. But homes, too, are echoes. And maybe, just maybe, they can carry new songs. At bedtime, I turned on the nightlight for the first time. Stars danced on the ceiling. I lay on the floor, hands behind my head, and whispered, I hope you like it here, Emma. I know it's not perfect, but it's yours now. As long as you want it. And somehow, that night, for the first time in months, I slept without dreams. There is no guidebook for the first morning you wake up with a child in your home. No chapter titled What to Say When She Walks into the Kitchen in Dinosaur Pajamas, or How to Make Breakfast Without Setting Off the Smoke Alarm. There's just you, the silence, and the small pair of footsteps that suddenly make the silence less lonely. Emma moved in on a Friday afternoon. Mark dropped her off with a small suitcase, a backpack shaped like a ladybug, and a hesitant smile. She's nervous, he whispered at the door. But she chose to come. That mattered more than I could say. Emma didn't say much that first day. She walked through the apartment like it was a museum, looking, not touching. She paused longest at her room. When she saw the nightlight and the yellow desk, she just said, "It's bright." I couldn't tell if that was good or bad. Dinner was awkward. I made spaghetti. She ate exactly 3 noodles and a breadstick. Later, she sat on the couch with a book in her lap, though I wasn't sure she was reading. I sat in the chair across from her, pretending not to watch her pretend to read. It was, all in all, the most intense silence I've ever shared with another person. The next morning, I tried to make breakfast. Emphasis on tried. I burned the toast. Twice. Dropped 1 egg on the floor. Forgot to ask if she liked orange juice until I had already poured it. She walked into the kitchen mid-chaos, rubbed her eyes, and blinked at the smoke rising from the toaster. I froze. A surprise? She stared. Then giggled. It wasn't loud. Not one of those deep, belly laughs that fill a room. But it was real. And it was mine. Her first laugh here. I smiled. Want cereal instead? She nodded. Please. I poured it too fast and spilled a little. She handed me a paper towel without a word. We didn't talk much over breakfast. But we didn't need to. She sat across from me, legs swinging, spoon clinking against the bowl. And I thought, this is what mornings should feel like. Later, we went to the park. Not far, just the corner one with the rusty swings and uneven grass. She brought a notebook and colored pencils. I brought a coffee and nerves. She didn't ask me to push her on the swings. But she drew something while I sat on the bench. When she finished, she handed me the page. It was a picture of two turtles. One big, one small. They were wearing sunglasses and eating pizza. This one's you, she said, pointing to the taller turtle. What's my name? She tapped the shell. Still Coolio, but bigger. That night, I offered to read to her before bed. She shrugged, but didn't say no. We sat on the floor of her room, back against the wall, her head barely touching my arm. I opened Charlotte's Web. My voice shook at first out of fear, not emotion, but I found rhythm by the second page. She interrupted me only once. Do you think animals talk when we're not looking? I paused. Maybe. I think they have secrets we'll never understand. Mommy used to say that. I looked down. She was probably right. A long pause. Then, she read to me every night. I'd like to do that too, I said softly. She didn't respond. But when I turned the page, she leaned in a little closer. That first weekend blurred by. Small things became victories. Remembering to pack her lunch. Folding her clothes without messing up the socks. Learning she didn't like sandwiches cut diagonally. Each night, she said a few more words. Each morning, she smiled a little sooner. She still had bad dreams. I could hear her shifting in bed, whimpering sometimes. I never asked, and she never offered. But once, at 3 a.m., I found her standing in the hallway, blanket in one hand, stuffed turtle in the other. I don't like the quiet, she whispered. Me neither, I said. She climbed onto the couch next to me. Fell asleep with her head on my chest. I didn't move for hours. On Monday, I burned the toast again. On purpose this time. She looked at me, eyes wide. You did that on purpose? Maybe, I said, shrugging dramatically. Maybe it's my secret recipe. She giggled. You're weird. Thanks. She handed me the jelly jar. Try again tomorrow. I nodded. Deal. And just like that, breakfast became a ritual. Burnt toast. Giggles. Jelly. Try again tomorrow. That evening, as I was cleaning the kitchen, I caught her sitting on the living room floor with a pencil and paper. Drawing. I watched from the doorway. She was sketching something that looked suspiciously like Mebelding head, crooked smile, glasses too big. I walked in. Is that supposed to be me? No, she said, deadpan. It's Coolio. But human. Of course. She handed it to me. At the bottom, in blocky letters, it read, "My new dad." I blinked. Swallowed. "Thanks," I said quietly. "You can put it next to the turtle one," she said, turning back to her crayons. I did. Right there on the wall, next to the desk. Between the stars and the window. That night, as I read her a chapter of Charlotte's Web, she interrupted again. "Do you miss her?" she asked. I didn't need to ask who. "Yes," I said. "Me too." We sat in silence. And for the first time, that silence didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge. After she fell asleep, I stayed up late, sitting by the window with my notebook. I wrote. Day 4. Today, she called me her new dad. I don't know what I've done to deserve that title. But tomorrow, I'll burn the toast again. On purpose. Just to see her smile. There's a silence that lives inside houses. Not the comfortable kind, filled with quiet rituals and shared glances. But the kind that hums beneath floorboards. The kind that grows heavy with things you never say. I've known that kind of silence for most of my life. One night, about 2 weeks after Emma moved in, she asked a question that froze me in place. We had just finished reading Charlotte's Web, the last chapter. She didn't cry when Charlotte died, though I saw her lips tighten, her fingers grip the edge of the blanket. When I closed the book, she looked up and said, "Why didn't you come sooner?" It wasn't angry. It wasn't even sad. Just a question. A child's honest curiosity. But it knocked the breath out of me. I stared at her, unsure how to explain years of silence. How to describe the shape of absence. How to tell her that I didn't know she existed until a few weeks ago, and even if I had known, I wasn't sure the man I was could have shown up the way she needed. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, "I'm sorry." She nodded. Rolled over. Pulled the blanket up to her chin. Nothing more. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Because her question didn't echo in her room. It echoed in mine. Growing up, my father wasn't cruel. But he was distant. He was the kind of man who measured love in tasks completed. Bills paid. Car repaired. Lawn mowed. He never said, "I'm proud of you." Never once said, "I love you." Never hugged me unless someone else was watching. My mother called it his way of caring. I called it absence with a voice. The first time I got in trouble at school, I was 10. I had gotten into a fight because someone called me book boy. The principal called my parents. My mother picked me up. My father never said a word about it. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. Just silence. The kind that wrapped around your chest and taught you to hold your breath. It took me years to realize that what I had mistaken for strength was just fear with a poker face. When Claire and I were together, she used to ask me why I never spoke about my childhood. I'd smile. change the subject. Pour another glass of wine. She'd let it go. But sometimes, she'd whisper, "You don't have to be quiet just because they were." I never answered. Maybe I didn't know how. Maybe I still don't. But now there's Emma. And she asks things. Sometimes directly. Sometimes through the tilt of her head or the way she holds a crayon without drawing. She's quiet, like me. But curious, like Claire. And I can't pass the silence down like an inheritance. I won't. A few days later, I took Emma to the bookstore. Not the one I used to work at, too many memories there. Just a small corner shop with creaky floors and mismatched chairs. She browsed the picture books while I wandered aimlessly. At one point, she held up a book and asked, "Did your dad ever read to you?" I froze. Then lied. "Sometimes," I said. It felt easier. Cleaner. But it wasn't true. He never did. Not once. That night, I wrote in my notebook. Day 12. She's asking questions I don't know how to answer. Not because I don't have the words, but because the truth is heavier than I thought. I want to protect her from the weight of the past. But maybe honesty is a better shelter than silence. A few nights later, I sat on her bed after reading. She was quiet, looking at the ceiling. "I lied to you the other day," I said. She looked at me, wide-eyed. "My dad never read to me," I said. Not once. She didn't speak. Just waited. "I don't want to be like that," I continued. "I don't always know how to talk about things. But I'm trying. Because you matter. And you deserve someone who shows up. Even when it's hard." She blinked. "It's okay. I like your stories better anyway." Then, after a pause, "You can tell me the truth. Even if it's sad." That moment broke something open in me. Not in a dramatic way. No flood of tears or movie score crescendo. Just release. The sense that maybe I could be something new. That maybe love isn't about getting it right. Maybe it's just about being brave enough to stay in the room. Emma still asks hard questions. Why do people die? Why do some kids not have moms or dads? Did you and mommy love each other? I never rush the answers. I let them come slow. Real. And when I don't know, I say so. Sometimes she just nods and goes back to coloring. Sometimes she says, "Me too." We're building something, brick by brick. Out of bedtime stories, burnt toast, and truths that take time. And every day, I remind myself, silence may have raised me, but it will not raise her. It started like any other morning. Burnt toast, orange juice, mismatched socks. Emma wore her backpack like a turtle shell and insisted on bringing her stuffed animal, a rabbit named Pancake, because he's nervous about the spelling test. I packed her lunch, double-checked her water bottle, and tied her shoes in a lopsided knot she'd eventually undo herself. Before she walked out the door, she turned to me and asked, "Will you be there when I get home?" "I always am," I smiled. By 11:42 a.m., I was running red lights. The call came from the school nurse. Emma has a fever. She's asking for you. Can you come right away? There was something in her tone. Not urgent exactly, but cautious. I didn't ask questions. Just grabbed my keys and ran. The nurse's office was a cramped room that smelled like hand sanitizer and uncertainty. Emma lay curled on a vinyl cot, cheeks flushed, her breath shallow. I knelt beside her. "Hey, kiddo." She opened her eyes just a sliver and whispered, "Pancake fell." I picked up the rabbit from the floor and tucked it under her arm. Then I touched her forehead. She was burning. Not just warm. Burning. I turned to the nurse. Has she had medicine? A small dose, yes. But her temperature's still high, 103.2. You should take her in. I nodded. My hand shook as I lifted her into my arms. She didn't resist. Just laid her head on my shoulder and murmured, "You came fast." "Always," I whispered. The pediatric ER was everything I feared: bright, sterile, echoing with anxious footsteps and muffled coughs. We sat in triage for what felt like hours. Emma curled into me like a question mark. When the nurse asked for her medical history, I faltered. "Any known allergies?" "I don't know." "Has she had febrile seizures before?" "I don't know." "Is she up to date on vaccines?" "I think so." The nurse didn't judge me. But I judged myself. I was her father. And I didn't know these things. Eventually, they took us to a small room, where a doctor examined her and ordered fluids and fever reducers. "She'll be okay," he said. "Just a viral spike. But you did the right thing bringing her in." I nodded. But all I heard was, "You didn't know sooner." Emma drifted in and out of sleep. I sat beside her bed, gripping her tiny hand, counting the seconds between each breath. When she opened her eyes again, she looked straight at me and said, "I thought you might not come." My throat tightened. "I'll always come, Emma. I promise. Even if I'm sick. Especially then." She nodded. Closed her eyes again. The hours passed in a blur of monitors beeping, nurses whispering, time slowing. At one point, I stepped into the hallway and called Mark. "She's going to be okay," I said. But I wasn't ready for this. "No one ever is," he said. "But you're there. That's what matters." I didn't know what medicine she takes. I didn't even know her doctor's name. "You'll learn." "What if I mess it all up?" He paused. Then said, "Then you fix it." That's what dads do. When Emma was finally cleared to go home, it was nearly sunset. I carried her to the car, her limbs heavy with sleep, her stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. At home, I laid her gently on the couch, covered her with a blanket, and sat nearby with a glass of water she wouldn't drink. The apartment felt too quiet. Too still. I didn't want to be alone with the fear that had clawed through me all day. So I did the only thing I could think of. I wrote. Day 16. Today I was more scared than I've been in years. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I realized how much I could lose. It's strange how someone can enter your life so recently, yet feel like your whole world. Emma is my world now. I may never get everything right, but she will never doubt that I will show up. No matter how long the day. No matter how afraid I am. That night, she woke up around midnight. Groggy. Sweaty. Eyes glassy but aware. "Can I sleep in your bed?" she whispered. I nodded. Helped her climb in. She curled against my side, hand on my chest, rabbit wedged between us. "You were really fast," she mumbled. "I had to be," I said. A pause. "You're good at being a dad," she added, sleep thick in her voice. I blinked into the darkness. No one had ever told me that before. "Thanks, kiddo," I whispered. "I'm trying." And for the first time, I didn't just believe it. I knew it. Some days come without warning. They don't knock. They don't announce themselves with drama or urgency. They slip in quietly, like sunlight through the curtains on a morning you didn't know you needed. And sometimes, those are the days that change you most. Emma woke up with her cheeks cool again, her forehead no longer burning. I checked her temperature 3 times before I let myself believe it. She laughed when I did it the 3rd time and said, "Dad, I'm not toast." "I just want to make sure you're not burnt toast," I teased. She rolled her eyes. "Only you burn toast, remember?" Touché. We stayed home that day. No school, no errands. Just home. I made pancakes. Real ones, not the rabbit. I let her pour the syrup and stir the batter, even though it ended up more on the counter than in the bowl. She drew smiley faces in the mixture with blueberries. "Does this one look like you?" she asked. "It's too round." She grinned. "Exactly." After breakfast, we played a board game with missing pieces and invented our own rules. Then we built a blanket fort in the living room, one that sagged in the middle and required a stack of books and a broom handle to hold it up. Inside, it smelled like fabric softener and childhood. She brought her coloring books. I brought a flashlight and a bag of trail mix. We laid on the floor, heads side by side, watching the shadows the flashlight made on the sheets above us. "Do you think this counts as camping?" she asked. "Only if we make s'mores. We have marshmallows. No chocolate. We can pretend." So we did. In the afternoon, she napped on the couch while I cleaned the kitchen, sort of. Mostly, I stood at the sink and stared at her. She looked so small in sleep. So soft. Her face no longer flushed. One hand curled under her cheek. The other loosely wrapped around Pancake's ear. And I thought, this is the miracle. Not the absence of illness. Not the avoidance of disaster. But this perfectly unremarkable moment of peace. That night, we didn't read a story. She asked if she could tell me one instead. I lay back on her bed, arms behind my head, as she climbed under the blanket with a flashlight and a notebook. "Once upon a time," she began, there was a turtle named Coolio. But now, he was a dad. So he was Coolio the Elder. I smiled. Coolio the Elder lived in a house made of toast. It was always burning, but he didn't mind. Why toast? Because it smells like morning. She continued. The story made no sense. Rabbits who ran libraries, clouds that baked pies, a duck named Karen who was always mad about something. But I laughed. And she laughed. And the world felt whole. When she reached the end, she asked, "Do you think stories have to make sense?" "No," I said. "They just have to make someone feel something." She nodded. "Then I think this was a good story." "So do I." After she fell asleep, I stayed a while. Listened to her breathing. Watched the nightlight cast slow-moving stars across the ceiling. I thought of Claire. Of how she used to say that ordinary days were the hardest to hold on to. People remember birthdays and weddings, she once told me, but the best days are the ones you almost forget. The Tuesday afternoons. The laundry and music and pancakes. That's where the real magic is. She was right. Later, in the quiet of my room, I opened my notebook. Day 21. Today, nothing happened. And it was beautiful. No hospitals. No hard questions. No fear. Just pancakes and thoughts and stories that didn't make sense. I used to think miracles were rare. Sudden. Loud. But maybe a miracle is just this, one ordinary day, completely whole. And maybe I'm learning to believe I deserve them too. There are words we keep locked away. Not because we don't want to say them, but because we're afraid of what will happen if we do. What if they change everything? Or worse, what if they change nothing? It started with a photograph. Emma had found an old photo album while digging through the bottom shelf of my closet. She appeared in the hallway with dust on her nose and the album pressed to her chest like treasure. "Who are these people?" she asked, flipping it open on the coffee table. The first page was a picture of me, young and awkward, standing beside my father. We both looked uncomfortable, like we'd been caught pretending to be a version of ourselves we didn't understand. "That's your grandpa," I said slowly. She studied him. He looked serious. He was. What was he like? I hesitated. Then said, he believed in working hard and not talking about feelings. She tilted her head. "Did he love you?" My breath caught. I think he did. But he didn't know how to show it. She looked up at me. "That's sad." "It is." We turned a few more pages. Pictures of me at school. My mother with her hands always half raised like she was mid-laugh or mid-warning. Claire in a park, the wind catching her hair just right. Emma stopped at that one. "Do you miss her?" she asked. "Every day." "Me too." A long silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Sometimes I think if I talk about her, I'll forget the sound of her voice." I sat down beside her. I used to think that too. That silence was the safest way to keep someone. Is it? No, I said. Silence just makes you feel more alone. She turned another page. A photo of Claire and me, sitting on the bookstore steps. We both looked like we had no idea how young we still were. Emma traced Claire's face with one finger. She used to sing to me at night, she said. But only when she thought I was already asleep. I smiled. She used to sing to me too. But only when she was a little drunk. Emma laughed. What did she sing? Bad 80s songs. She sang Taylor Swift to me. We both laughed then. A strange, beautiful sound. Later that night, she didn't want a bedtime story. Can we just talk? She asked. So we lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, letting the night hold our words gently. If Mommy didn't die, she said, would I still be living with you? The question hit like a stone in still water. I don't know, I said honestly. She nodded. I don't remember her being sick. Just tired a lot. She used to say she was saving her energy for something special. She meant you, I said. Do you think she's mad that I'm okay now? Without her? I turned to face her. Absolutely not. I think she'd be proud. So proud. Emma looked at me with wide, wet eyes. Are you going to die too? Not now, please. Not this kind of fear, this kind of truth. I don't plan to, I said. But if something ever happens, I want you to know that being with you has been the most important thing I've ever done. Her lips trembled. Even when I'm annoying. Especially then. We were quiet for a while after that. Her hand found mine beneath the blanket. Then she said, sometimes I get mad that she left. You're allowed to. And sometimes I get mad that you weren't there. I'm mad at that too. I don't want to be mad. Being mad just means you loved her. She squeezed my fingers. Do you think she knows we talk about her? I think she knows everything that matters. That night, after she fell asleep, I didn't go to my room. I stayed in the hallway outside her door, back against the wall, staring at nothing in particular. Not because I was sad, though I was. Not because I was afraid, though I was that too. But because some nights, the silence is just too full to leave. So I opened my notebook. Day 25. Today, we said things we've been afraid to say. I told her the truth. She told me her fear. We sat in the middle of both. We miss someone who's not coming back. But in that missing, we're finding each other. I don't know if I'm doing any of this right. But maybe right isn't the goal. Maybe it's just this. Saying what needs to be said. And listening like it matters. The first time someone calls you dad is never quite what you expect. There's no dramatic music. No fireworks. Just a quiet little moment that sneaks up on you and stays. For me, it came in Cran. It was a Sunday morning, a few weeks after Emma had gotten sick. Life had slipped into a kind of gentle rhythm since then. Morning routines, bedtime stories, accidental burnt toast, which she still insisted I did on purpose, and long walks where we pointed at clouds and gave them ridiculous names. We weren't perfect, but we were okay. That morning, I was making coffee when she called from her room. "Can I have paper?" "There's a whole drawer full," I called back. "But I want the big kind." I handed her a blank sheet from the printer and a handful of markers. "Art emergency." She grinned. "Mission critical." I went back to the kitchen, distracted by bills and the whirring sound the fridge had started making. I didn't think about what she was drawing. I'd seen so many turtles, suns with sunglasses, and clouds that looked suspiciously like pancakes that I'd stopped trying to guess. 15 minutes later, she appeared in the doorway, her face serious, the paper held behind her back. "Close your eyes," she said. "Oh. Is it scary?" "No. But it's important." I closed my eyes. Heard her footsteps. Felt her press the paper into my hands. "Okay," she whispered. I opened them. And there it was. Drawn in her shaky, colorful lines. A house with 2 stick figures in front, one tall, one small. Both smiling. The tall one had glasses and wild hair. The small one had 2 pigtails and held the other's hand. Above them, in blue marker, she had written, "Me and my dad. Home." I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I probably should have. My chest tightened. My throat closed. I couldn't speak. "Do you like it?" she asked, voice suddenly unsure. I looked at her. At her small face, tilted just slightly. Her eyes, Claire's eyes, wide with a hope I hadn't realized she was still carrying. "I love it," I managed. "So much." She beamed. "You can put it on the fridge." I nodded. "I will." I taped it to the center of the fridge door, careful not to crease it. Right next to a grocery list and a magnet shaped like a turtle wearing a crown. And then I stood there. Just stood there. Because the word Dad written in uneven letters by a 6-year-old with banana on her sleeve was the heaviest, most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Later that day, when Emma had gone to her room to play, I sat at the table and wrote. Not in the notebook. Not this time. But a letter. To Claire. Dear Claire. She called me Dad today. Not out loud. But on paper. And somehow, that made it feel even more real. Like she was writing it into existence. Giving me a name I never earned but hoped to grow into. She's funny. And strong. And smarter than I'll ever be. She still gets quiet when she's sad, and loud when she's tired, and she sings to Pancake when she thinks I'm not listening. She's so much like you. But she's also her own little universe. I want you to know I'm trying. Not just to be good enough, but to be present. To be soft where I was taught to be hard. To be honest where I used to hide. To stay. I'm not perfect. But I think you knew that. You loved me anyway. And now I get to pass that kind of love on to her. Thank you for this gift I didn't ask for. For this life I didn't expect. For this word Dad that has become my anchor. I hope you'd be proud. I think you would. Love. Daniel. I folded the letter, slid it into the back of a photo frame on my bookshelf, one with Claire's face frozen in a laugh, wind catching her hair just enough to blur the edge of the memory. I didn't need to send it. She'd hear it anyway. That night, Emma looked at the drawing on the fridge as we passed into the kitchen. "Do you think it'll stay up forever?" she asked. "I hope so," I said. And I meant it. Not just the paper, but the word. The truth of it. Day 28. Today, my daughter wrote my name for the first time. Not Daniel. Not just him. But Dad. I've never felt more seen, or more afraid of getting it wrong, but also more certain than ever that I will keep trying. Some things are too heavy to carry in silence, so we write them down. Not because the paper can hold them better, but because we finally admit we're tired of holding them alone. I started writing to Claire 3 nights after Emma's drawing went up on the fridge. It wasn't planned. I had sat down with my notebook, as I often did after Emma had gone to sleep. But that night, instead of writing a journal entry or a to-do list, I found myself turning to a clean page and simply beginning with, "Claire." I don't know if this is strange or comforting, writing to someone who can't write back. Maybe it's both. That first letter was clumsy. Not poetic, not profound. Just honest. It spilled out like a confession. The fear I still carried. The guilt that lived beneath every quiet moment with Emma. The lingering resentment for what she hadn't told me. And, buried beneath all that, the aching gratitude for what she'd left behind. I didn't read it over. Just folded it and slid it into a small wooden box I kept in the back of my closet. Then I wrote another one the next night. And the one after that. Each letter became a ritual-me way of talking to the woman I once loved, the mother of my child, the ghost who still lived in the corners of our lives. Some nights, I told her about Emma's new favorite cereal. How she insisted on wearing mismatched socks. How she hummed while brushing her teeth. Other nights, I told her the truth. That I was still scared. That sometimes I felt like a fraud. That I didn't know how to fill the space she left behind without constantly measuring myself against it. In one letter, I wrote, "You should have told me, Claire." Not because I deserved it, but because she did. She deserved 2 parents who could figure it out together, even if it was messy, even if it didn't last. But I understand now. You were scared. And maybe you thought sparing me was an act of love. Still, I wish I had known. I would have loved her from the first breath. Not just from the first letter. As the weeks passed, the letters changed. Less blame. More reflection. Less aching. More remembering. I wrote to her about small victories, Emma's first school drawing that didn't involve a turtle, the night she finally learned how to tie her own shoes, after 3 failed knots and 1 tantrum, the way she looked at me like I was home. I wrote about missing her laugh, and how Emma sometimes had the same lopsided smile when she was pretending not to cry. I wrote about grief not as a wound, but as a thread still connecting us. One morning, Emma found me sealing a letter. "Who's that for?" she asked. "A friend," I said. She tilted her head. "Is it Mommy?" I froze. "Yes." Her eyes softened. "She doesn't have a mailbox." "No," I said. "But sometimes writing helps when you miss someone." She nodded. "I think Mommy would like that." "Yeah?" She liked when people paid attention. Writing is like paying attention, right? I smiled. Exactly. That night, Emma sat with me at the table and drew a picture. A woman with long hair. A turtle. A star in the corner. "She's watching us," she said. "From the stars." I didn't correct her. I didn't say anything. I just looked at the drawing and felt something soften in me. Something I hadn't realized was still tense. In one of my last letters, "At least for now," I wrote, "Claire, you've missed so much. But you've left so much, too. She is bright, and kind, and so impossibly strong. She asks questions I don't know how to answer, and forgives faster than I deserve. She calls me Dad now. And each time, it breaks me open and stitches me back together all at once. I'm still learning. Still failing. Still showing up. But maybe that's enough. Maybe love doesn't have to be perfect. Just persistent." I placed that letter in the wooden box, alongside the others. It was getting full now. Heavy in the way that grief always is, but not unbearable. Not anymore. Emma still talks about Claire. Not every day. Not always out loud. Sometimes in the way she lines her stuffed animals in a perfect row. Or how she picks out the exact shade of purple she says Mommy liked best. We talk about her like whether something that shaped us. That we can't touch now. But feel always. Day 35. Tonight, I stopped writing to say goodbye. I started writing to say, "You're still here." Not as a ghost, or a shadow, or a regret, but as part of who we are becoming. Claire, you are not gone from this home. You are in every laugh Emma shares. Every question she dares to ask. Every moment I choose to stay. Some days start normal. They begin with cereal and mismatched socks, with sleepy hugs and school drop-offs. They trick you into thinking you've figured this life out. And then, without warning, everything begins to slip. That morning, the toaster broke. I didn't think much of it. Just sighed and stuck bread in the oven instead. Then I got a call from work. The freelance project I'd been counting on fell through. The client changed their mind last minute. No payment. No explanation. The rent was due in 5 days. Then came an email from social services. There is a delay in finalizing Emma's guardianship paperwork due to a missing signature from the deceased biological mother. Additional documentation will be required. I read the sentence 3 times. Claire couldn't sign anything. She was gone. I felt like screaming, but instead, I just sat there, staring at the screen like it had betrayed me personally. By mid-afternoon, I was pacing. The apartment felt too small. The noise in my head too loud. I forgot to eat. Drank too much coffee. Snapped at the faucet when it dripped. When I picked Emma up from school, I forced a smile. She was quiet in the car, clutching her backpack tighter than usual. I asked, "Everything okay?" She shrugged. "It's just a day." That phrase echoed in my chest. It's just a day. Except today felt like a breaking point. At home, I burned dinner. Not the toast, actual food. Emma wrinkled her nose and said, "Can we just do cereal?" I nodded. Too tired to pretend otherwise. She ate quietly, her spoon scraping the bowl in slow, steady circles. I barely touched mine. Afterward, I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, head in my hands. Emma stood in the doorway, watching me. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, voice small. My head shot up. No. No, Emma. Never. Then why does it feel like you're far away? And that was it. The thread snapped. Tears welled up before I could stop them. "I'm just trying so hard," I said. "And I feel like I'm still failing." Emma stepped closer. "You're not." I burned dinner. I lost a job. The government wants forms we can't give them. And I don't know what happens next. I don't know if they'll let me keep you. The words tumbled out before I could catch them. She froze. "Keep me?" I reached for her. "I didn't mean. You don't want me." The question broke me. I dropped to my knees in front of her, cupped her face with both hands. "Emma, I want you more than anything. I'm just scared. That I'm not enough. That they'll take you away because I'm not perfect." She blinked. "You don't have to be perfect." My breath caught. "You just have to stay." Silence. That kind of silence that settles everything. I pulled her into a hug, held her so tightly I felt her heart against mine. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered. "Okay," she said. "Then I'm not either." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the fridge, at her drawing still pinned there. I thought about giving up. About calling Mark and saying, maybe she deserves better. About packing a bag, leaving a letter, disappearing like someone else had once done. But then I remembered her voice. "You just have to stay." And I knew I would. Not because I was fearless, but because I loved her more than I feared failing. In the morning, I made pancakes. She woke up and sniffed the air. "You didn't burn them." I had motivation. She giggled. Sat at the table. "Today's going to be better." I nodded. "Today's already better." She paused. "Because you stayed." I smiled. "Exactly." Later, I wrote. Day 41. Yesterday, I almost gave up. But she didn't let me. She didn't beg or cry or argue. She just said, "Stay." And in that one word, she gave me permission to be imperfect. To be scared. To be enough anyway. This isn't about getting everything right. It's about not running when everything feels wrong. It's about staying. It was a Tuesday. No birthdays. No holidays. No reason to remember it. And yet, I think I'll remember it for the rest of my life. The sky was the kind of pale blue that feels almost shy. The air was crisp. The coffee didn't burn. Emma came out of her room wearing her shirt backward and socks that didn't match. Intentional? I asked. She gave me a deadpan look. It's fashion. Forgive me, I am but an old man lost in your generation style. Boomer, she whispered under her breath as she walked to the table. I laughed so hard I spilled the milk. Breakfast was uneventful, which, in our house, was rare enough to feel like a small miracle. No burnt toast. No spilled juice. Just a quiet rhythm, the spoon tapping, the ticking clock, the occasional giggle from Emma when I tried to imitate Pancake's very serious voice. After breakfast, we skipped school. Technically, it was an approved personal day. I had emailed her teacher the night before with some vague excuse about family reflection. But really? I just wanted one day with her. One full, uninterrupted day. No forms. No calls. No emergencies. Just us. We packed peanut butter sandwiches, apples, and 2 juice boxes. Emma added gummy bears for emotional balance. I didn't argue. We drove to a quiet park just outside the city, wide open fields, lazy trees, a pond that mirrored the sky. On the way there, she sang along to songs I didn't know the lyrics to and made up dance moves in the passenger seat that involved aggressive elbow flapping. You know, I said, you could probably join a dance team. She grinned. Or start one. Called The Awkward Swans. Perfect. At the park, we didn't do anything special. We walked. We Saturday. We fed ducks with pieces of old bread Emma had secretly stashed in her bag. They like the crust best, she said with authority. I believed her. She collected a leaf with mysterious spots and declared it magical. I took a picture of her holding it up to the sun. She made me promise not to delete it, even if my face looked weird in the background. It's not weird, I said. It's rugged. You look like a potato. Thank you. Around noon, we laid out a blanket near the pond and ate our lunch. She told me a story about a girl who lived inside a turtle shell and sold dreams for candy. I asked if the dreams were good ones. Only if you bought the sour candy. Why? Because sweet dreams get boring. The sour ones make you wake up and try harder. I looked at her, this little philosopher in pigtails, and thought, where did you come from? Then remembered Claire. And also me. After lunch, we lay side by side on the blanket, eyes closed, faces to the sun. I like this day, she said softly. Me too. It feels like it matters. Even if we don't do anything big. It matters because we're in it. She smiled. I think Mommy would like it too. I think she'd be here with us, if she could. Emma nodded. Maybe she is. I didn't argue. Because maybe she was. We stayed until the sun started to dip. Then drove home with the windows down and music loud. We didn't talk much, but the silence was full warm, content, unafraid. At home, we made hot chocolate. She added too many marshmallows. I added one extra when she wasn't looking. We clinked mugs like it was a toast. To what? I asked. She grinned. To staying. That night, after she fell asleep, I didn't reach for my notebook. Didn't feel the need to untangle anything. Everything felt still. So I just stood in her doorway for a few minutes, watching her breathe, listening to the quiet hum of the nightlight. The stars from the projector moved slowly across her ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I was just here, present. Enough. Still, later out of habit or gratitude I picked up my pen. Day 45. Today was quiet. Gentle. No triumphs. No failures. No lessons wrapped in pain. And that's why it mattered. We ate sandwiches. Watched ducks. Named clouds. Made jokes that no one else would find funny. It was a day without headlines. But it's the one I'll carry the longest. Because she smiled like she was safe. And I believed her. The room was beige. Beige walls. Beige chairs. Beige blinds that filtered in just enough light to remind you it was still daytime, even if your stomach insisted it wasn't. 3 people sat across from me. All dressed in quiet authority blazers, notepads, polite expressions that said, "We're not here to judge you." But we are. It was the final home placement interview. The last hurdle. I'd passed background checks, provided financial statements, submitted letters of reference from Mark and my former boss at the bookstore. But this was different. This was me, in a room, being asked to explain why I thought I was worthy of staying her father. Mr. Hart, one of them began, her voice smooth but practiced. Can you describe your current income situation and how you plan to support Emma long term? I answered as best I could. Freelance writing gigs. A small editing contract. Savings not much, but steady. Another leaned forward. How do you plan to handle her emotional needs, considering the recent trauma of losing her mother? I paused. I listen, I said simply. I don't always have answers. But I don't run from the hard questions. Even when they scare me. The woman nodded, scribbled something down. The third asked, "What's the most difficult moment you've had with her so far?" I thought about that night Emma in the hallway, asking if I wanted to keep her. I told them about it. "And how did you respond?" the man asked. I stayed. Silence. They continued. Questions about routines, boundaries, discipline, screen time, school reports. I answered them all not perfectly, but honestly. And yet, with every word, I felt like I was shrinking. Like I was being measured not by what I'd become, but by what I hadn't been when Emma first came into the world. Finally, the lead caseworker set her pen down and asked, "Why do you think you deserve to be her father?" It was the question I'd been bracing for. The one that sat behind all the others. I took a breath. "I don't know if I do," I said. "But I'm already trying. Every day. And I'll keep trying. That's all I can promise." She blinked. No nod. No reaction. Just a glance at the clock. And then, the door opened. Emma stepped inside, holding a folded piece of paper. "I made something," she said quietly. The caseworker turned. "Emma, sweetheart, we're in the middle of..." "It's important," she said. Then walked straight to the table. She laid the paper down and unfolded it. A drawing. Two people on a couch. One big, one small. A bookshelf. A rabbit on the floor. A speech bubble above the big person's head that said, "You are safe." At the top, in her uneven, unmistakable handwriting, "This is my house. This is my dad. I want to stay." No one spoke. Even the pen stopped moving. Emma looked up. "You asked him why he should be my dad. But he already is." The caseworker cleared her throat. Something shimmered briefly behind her eyes, but she quickly blinked it away. "Thank you, Emma. That was helpful." Emma looked at me. I smiled. She nodded once, then walked out small and serious, as if she'd just closed a chapter with a single sentence. The rest of the interview was short. No more hard questions. Just polite goodbyes, handshakes, and promises of a final decision soon. But I already knew. Not because of what I said, but because of what Emma showed them. Because in that moment, no form, no document, no checklist could match the truth in her crayon lines. That night, I tucked her into bed. She looked up at me and whispered, "Did it help?" "More than you'll ever know," I said. She smiled. "I just told the truth." "You always do." She rolled over. I knew they'd like my drawing. I used the good markers. I laughed softly. That was the secret weapon. Later, I sat with my notebook. Day 50. Today, she saved me again. Not with big words. Not with proof. But with her presence. She reminded me that this isn't about being qualified. It's about being there. Still. Every single day. She drew us on the couch. In our home. Where she feels safe. And for the first time since all this began, I think I do too. There was no letter in the mail. No official envelope. No dramatic phone call or surprise knock at the door. Just a simple email. Approved. Finalized. She is yours. 3 short sentences. But I read them a dozen times. Maybe more. Not because I didn't believe them, but because I finally could. When I told Emma, she was sitting on the floor in the living room. building a Lego house with no roof. Guess what? I said, kneeling beside her. She glanced up. You bought the good cereal. Better. Better than cereal. Her eyes widened. Much better. I held up my phone. She read the email slowly, lips moving with each word. Then she looked at me. Didn't speak. Just wrapped her arms around my neck and held on. You're stuck with me now, I whispered into her hair. Good, she whispered back. Because I wasn't going anywhere either. That night, we celebrated. Nothing big. Just pancakes for dinner. A dance party in the kitchen. A movie under a blanket fort that collapsed halfway through. We laughed more than we watched. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You know, we don't have to do anything big to make it real." I know, I said. It already is. After she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table. My notebook open. Pen in hand. But I didn't write day 51. Not anymore. I just wrote. Today. And then, underneath it. We didn't become a family because of paperwork. We became a family because we stayed. Through burnt toast. Through bedtime stories. Through the silence, the grief, the guilt, the fear. We stayed. And staying, it turns out, is the most extraordinary thing an ordinary man like me could do. I closed the notebook. Not out of finality, but out of peace. There would be more days. More hard mornings. More questions I couldn't answer, and dreams I didn't yet understand. But I wouldn't count them anymore. Because we weren't surviving. We were living. Somewhere down the hallway, I heard the soft sound of feet padding across the floor. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, hair messy. I had a weird dream, she mumbled. Want to tell me about it? She nodded. Climbed into my lap. It was about a house made of pancakes, she said. But it wasn't sticky. Sounds like advanced architecture. She yawned. Do we still have whipped cream? In the morning, I smiled. She rested her head on my shoulder. Okay. I just wanted to check. We sat like that for a while. Nothing said. Nothing needed. Just here. Together. Final note. There is no ending to this story. Only mornings to wake up to. Only cereal to spill. Questions to answer. Drawings to hang. And days that no one will write songs about. But we'll remember anyway. Because we stayed.